Hello, today we're going to be talking about Idor, provide a practical example, and talk about how to prevent it. So what is Idor? Idor stands for Insecure Direct Object Reference. When we piece that apart, we have direct object references that are our IDs, specifically whenever clients make requests to service endpoints. And the insecure part for Idor typically means we're lacking appropriate access controls. So as a background, let's talk about REST APIs. So REST is an architectural style for how clients talk to server resources, and a URL represents the noun or what you are accessing. For this example, we have example.com API users, and the ID that's passed is 5. So within the user collection, we are saying we want the user entity with the ID of 5. HTTP methods represent the verb for what we're doing. So a GET typically represents we are reading data from the server. Put is whenever we make an update. Post for creating things. And there's also delete. There are other HTTP methods, but these are the most common. So when we look at direct object references, like we mentioned, they are IDs for objects within the service. There's different ways to represent these. So there's sequential, using a global unique identifier or universal unique identifier. Typically, you'll see a long string like is shown here, or a calculated or encoded ID using a hash, for example. So with Idor, we have this lack of access control. And so the problem is whenever we're missing these access controls, it allows access to other people's stuff within the service or app using these identifiers. This requires knowing or guessing the IDs. So there's several ways to find IDs. We can use fuzzing or guessing. So for example, if they're sequential IDs and we see that they're incrementing, that we can easily try starting from 1 and go up. We can also review front-end code available in the browser to see if IDs are calculated, or we can use existing features to list or search objects using the API of the service. So for example, if I can list users or objects, then I could potentially see their IDs and then exploit that through this Idor vulnerability. So now let's look at the practical example. So I went ahead and pulled up Portswigger. We have a lab for Idor to practice it. And for this lab, it says that user chat logs are stored directly on the server's file system and retrieved using static URLs. So we are tasked to solve the lab by finding the password for the user Carlos and log into their account. So going to the lab, we can see that there's a shop with various products, and it already gave a hint that it's related to the chat functionality. So if we go over to the live chat area, we can see that we are connected to Hal Pline. And while we're doing all this, I have Burp Suite running to collect all our requests sent to the server, so we can look at those. So to start with, we'll send a message. Hello, I need tech support. We get a response back. Let's go ahead and view our transcript. So we can see here that the transcripts are sequential. With this knowledge, we can go take a look at our Burp Suite intercepted requests. If I go ahead and pull up that downloaded transcript, we can see the response here. Send this to repeater. And within repeater, I'm going to change the transcript to ID 1. So if I send this request, I see a previous conversation with Hal Pline, and within it, it says, okay, my password is, and provides a password. Is that right? And the tech support responds with, yes, it is. So using this password, let's take this and go back to our lab, go to my account, try the user Carlos, and the password provided. And here we do get logged in. So that's the solution to the lab. So for preventing Idor vulnerabilities, the first aspect is proper access control, specifically on the server side. Any access controls on the client side can be easily bypassed through user modification of the JavaScript code, or even the request sent to the service API. we should treat all data from the client as untrusted. So when a user sends a request saying that I'm going to update my password and I'm currently ID 5, you need to verify that the current user ID does indeed match the provided ID if we're using it. And finally, using salted hashes or UUIDs can make it more difficult to identify valid or correct IDs. This is not technically a foolproof prevention, but it definitely makes it more difficult for the attacker to exploit an existing Idor vulnerability. And finally, I want to talk about some additional learning resources if you want to dive more into Idor. So one of the very helpful resources I've enjoyed using is Hack the Box Academy. They have a web attacks module that talks about Idor vulnerabilities, XXE, and HTTP verb tampering. This module, I believe, does have a cost associated with it, or you can get the yearly plan subscription. Alternatively, Portswigger has great content when it comes to web application attacks, and they have a section for Idor under their access control module. I'll post links in the description below, and thank you for tuning in. Have a good one.